The Military Times gives us the latest update on the next Trump-Russia conspiracy, and Beau of the fifth column sounds off again. Let's talk about it, y'all. Middle America. Well, if you are a fan of Beau of the fifth column, you have no one to blame. You don't have me to blame. You have an unnamed Middle American to blame, because there were a few folks who were so upset at me for daring to take Mr. Beau to task that this brother sent me this video with the latest update, because I'm sure he sincerely believed that this would cast aspersions on the video that I shot. Now, I have to say I was very surprised at the reaction from some of the fans of Beau. The accusation that he was being taken out of context, the statements that he was simply playing devil's advocates when he was making fact claims that were either true or false. I have to say, I was very surprised. Ladies and gentlemen, Middle America is not about promoting Donald Trump or denouncing Donald Trump. Middle America is not even about taking a neutral position or a middle position. Middle America is about reporting the truth as best as possible. And it's about reporting the truth from the way that I see it. Now, there's nobody on the planet that can accuse me of being pro-Trump, especially considering the last few videos that I've made, because, again, I'm trying to report as truthfully and as accurately as possible. Now, Mr. Beau has, one thing I will say is that he actually named a source in what we're about to review. So that's good. And unfortunately for him, he named a source that we could review. So without further ado, here's our brother Beau of the fifth column.
The Military Times is now reporting that the presidential daily briefing of more than a year ago included information on Russia's activities. It is also suggesting, although not confirmed, that John Bolton briefed the president in person about it. John Bolton has not confirmed that, though.
So right there, dear listener, now you tell me whether or not this brother is communicating that the Military Times has stated that Trump received this information as early as 2019. Which obviously belies Trump's most recent claim that he had never even seen the document. And then he mentions John Bolton, who is going to be very instrumental as we continue this video. Believe you me, watch till the end. He mentions John Bolton. He goes, well, Bolton, we can't really confirm. So did you see how we set that up? He first said that the Military Times definitively said this. They reported on this. And then he brought up John Bolton. He goes, well, we can't confirm that. Which would lead any rational person to believe that what he said previously about the Military Times reporting on this is a fact, right? If you don't believe me, let's continue watching.
More than a year ago. More than a year ago. That's what's being reported by the Military Times. You know, that great bastion of liberal thought. We're not talking about CNN. We're not talking about MSNBC. We're not talking about the New York Times. I cannot wait to see the President of the United States call the Military Times fake news.
Okay, so it's clear. The Military Times reported on this. They reported this. It's not CNN, not MSNBC. The Military Times said it. Okay. So I said, oh, okay. Well, he gave us a source. So I went to the Military Times, and sure enough, there is a report from the Military Times about this subject today. And here is what is on the very first paragraph of that report. It says, news reports allege that top officials in the White House were aware in early 2019 of classified intelligence indicating Russia was secretly offering bounties to the Taliban for the deaths of American troops. Did you catch that? The Military Times did not confirm this. The Military Times did not say positively this happened. All the Military Times reported was that there were sources who claim that this was true. That's all they said. And you know what? I said that in my video, and Beau said it in his video. We've all said it. It's called allegedly. This allegedly happened. That's all they said. But here's Beau, again, framing this discussion in such a way as to have you believe, if you didn't look it up yourself, that the Military Times agreed with this. The Military Times didn't take a position right or left on the issue, yay or nay on the issue. All they reported was that people said that. You know what's interesting? We keep hearing about these unnamed officials. We keep hearing about this over and over again. These unnamed officials, which is going to come up, by the way. But here's the DNI. The DNI is the Director of National Intelligence. Okay? That's what the DNI is. And you can go to their website. It's a .gov website. Our mission is to lead intelligence integration and forge an intelligence community that delivers the most insightful intelligence possible. You're talking about homeland security, counterproliferation, cyber threats, counterterrorism, etc., etc. This is the DNI. Listen to what the DNI said about 2 days ago. Statement by DNI Radcliffe. Radcliffe is the head of the DNI. I have confirmed that neither the president nor the vice president were ever briefed on the intelligence alleged by the New York Times in its reporting yesterday. The White House statement addressing this issue earlier today, which denied such a briefing occurred, was accurate. The New York Times reporting and all other subsequent news reports about such an alleged briefing are inaccurate. This is an official .gov agency. Say what you want, but here's what I have. I have unnamed shadow spooks who refuse to name themselves telling us that this happened in 2019, and then I have the director of the DNI telling us unequivocally that it did not happen. Interesting. Now, why doesn't Beau tell us that? Now, Beau, later on, as we're going to see, acts as if he's got some background in intelligence. He kind of acts that way, and some of his acolytes were telling me about his amazing background. So maybe I'll forgive Beau for not quoting the DNI. Maybe Beau doesn't even know the DNI exists. Maybe he doesn't know. Okay. But he did quote the Military Times, right? Okay. So we're on the Military Times page. He didn't even touch for his audience. Following a White House briefing for a small group of Democratic defense leaders on the issue, early Tuesday morning, House Armed Services Committee Chairman Adam Smith, who's a Democrat, mind you, said that allegations that Russians had paid bounties for the deaths of American service members are full of conflicting intelligence and conflicting opinions, putting its veracity in doubt, end quote. So I don't expect Beau to quote the DNI because I'm convinced he probably has no idea who and what the DNI are and who and what they do. But he did quote the Military Times, and he didn't let his audience know that the very first paragraph said that from a Democrat said the thing was full of holes and it had conflicting intelligence and there are conflicting opinions about it within the various intelligence agencies that puts the veracity of this accusation in doubt. Why didn't your man Beau tell us that? Beau acolytes, please explain that to me. This is not about Beau, by the way. This is about the media, confirmation bias, and we're going to see how dangerous this stuff becomes as we go on. So one, it is untrue, Beau, that the Military Times reported on this as if it actually happened. All they said was that it allegedly happened. Number two, the DNI unequivocally stated that that report and any other report that justifies that is wrong, which would include you. And third, even in the Military Times report where it says this allegedly happened by two random spooks that nobody knows, in the very first paragraph, the Democrat admits that the thing is full of contradictions and conflicting opinions and its veracity is highly doubtful. We continue.
The administration's position is evolving as this develops. First he didn't know, and now, well, it wasn't verified. Verified. That's not a thing, just to let you know. Intelligence is never really verified. That's not a term. Intelligence is about establishing intent. It's about telling the future. It's a crystal ball. The intelligence on the Berlin Wall falling wasn't verified until the bricks hit the ground.
Ladies and gentlemen, here is the George Bush White House Archives.gov dated 2015 March 31st. I'm sorry, 2005 31 March. This is in the archives. I'll get you the link. You can check it out yourself. It's a very, very long document, very boring document for some of you, but fascinating to certain people. Let me read something to you. What we were just told was that in the intelligence community, we don't verify. Verify is not a thing. Here's Beau from his garage telling us that verification is not a thing in the intelligence community. Okay, all right. Well, so here we are at whitehouse.gov. For the Bush Archives. In October 2002, at the request of members of Congress, the National Intelligence Council produced a National Intelligence Estimate, called an NIE, the most authoritative intelligence assessment produced by the intelligence community, which concluded that Iraq was reconstituting its nuclear weapons program. Okay, so I just put that quote up there so that you understand that an NIE is a National Intelligence Estimate, and it is the most authoritative document in the intelligence community. Okay, now that we've got that down, watch this. This guy is unbelievable to me. Newly instituted National Intelligence Council, remember this is 2005, so this was newly instituted 15 years ago. Newly instituted National Intelligence Council procedures require the collecting agency to review and verify the reliability of its sources used in the NIE. Literally, this is one of the first doctrines you learn once you pass these selection courses for these groups post the Iraq War because of the horrible stain that the Iraq War left on the agency. I have no idea what brother is talking about. Verification is not a thing in the intelligence community. What? It's the only thing. Let's see what happens when you don't verify. So this is a continuation of the same document that I just read to you. After the war, this is after we killed all those civilians over there in Iraq, the CIA attempted to verify the location of facilities in Iraq that the source had described and was unable to do so. Further investigation led the CIA to conclude that the source was directed by the Iraqi National Congress. You don't say. You mean when you do post-war verification, it's not a good thing because you cost a bunch of blood and money? What are you talking about, Beau? Verification is not a thing. It's just looking through the crystal ball. No, that's how you get Iraq, Beau. This man is speaking authoritatively about stuff that he obviously has no idea about. Now again, I'm not going to accuse brother of ignoring the whitehouse.gov intelligence apparatus archives. I'm not going to, because I'm sure that he has no idea that the thing even exists. And if he does know that, now be careful, some of you guys, when you go to defend brother. Because if he does know that this exists, that means he knows about this doctrine, which means he lied to you. So it's better to say that brother's ignorant on this point and not lying. Now the other thing, where he quoted the Military Times and didn't tell us what was in the first paragraph, I don't know how else to say that other than he's just being simply dishonest. We continue.
But sure, let's suggest for a moment that the failed casino owner, that he had questions and didn't think that the people who do this for a living, that they knew what they were talking about. What was done to verify it? What was done to gather more information on it? If this was just background chatter, it should have launched a massive operation. This is a huge thing. It's not a minor development. This is a big thing. So what was done to verify it? What actions did the administration take? What did they direct the intelligence community or those in the field to do? Nothing.
Again, he's demonstrating that he has no conversance with how the intelligence community operates. This is one of the things that I think is actually bad about the intelligence community. They do not view themselves as people who report to the president. I will show you that soon. I'll show you that pretty soon. That's not their self-understanding. And you can go back as far as Kennedy and some of the things that he said in public about the intelligence community. These are not individuals that wait on the president to tell them what to do. But, here once again is the DNI. Here's Ratcliffe. He issues a statement on the impact of unauthorized disclosures on force protection. Force protection would be the protection of military personnel, particularly overseas. U.S. and coalition force protection is a critical priority for both the president and the intelligence community. The selective leaking of any classified information disrupts the vital interagency work to collect, assess, and mitigate threats and places our forces at risk. It is also, simply put, a crime. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, there were a few spooks who are unnamed. Go to the AP, go to CNN, go to MSNBC. They don't name these people who leaked this information. And that actually is putting the work of the DNI and everybody else in the intelligence community backwards. So when you say, Beau, what are they doing? They're doing a lot. They're just not going to give you a play-by-play update on CNN, Beau. We are still investigating the alleged intelligence referenced in recent media reporting, and we will brief the president and congressional leaders at the appropriate time. This is the analytic process working the way that it should. Unfortunately, unauthorized disclosures now jeopardize our ability to ever find out the full story with respect to these allegations, because now everybody and their mother knows what's going on. And if we had intelligence assets that were working with Russia or the Taliban, now they're severely compromised. Congratulations, New York Times and Beau, for continuing to perpetuate this nonsense. Furthermore, this idea that Trump did nothing, he's a horrible president, he did nothing, all these troops are getting killed. Let me read something to you from the New York Times. A former human intelligence officer recalls internal debates within U.S. intelligence more than a decade ago over who was bankrolling bounties to Taliban fighters of $25,000 per U.S. soldiers and $50,000 for U.S. senior officers during his service in Afghanistan. Defense intelligence sources concluded the Russian government was likely providing the money as a part of a campaign to frustrate the U.S. occupation of Afghanistan, just as the U.S. had similarly sabotaged the Soviet occupation in the 1980s. Remember, the Soviets invaded Afghanistan, and we were arming and trading the Mujahideen to destroy them, and so they were speculating maybe they're doing that to us. This was a debate that was happening a decade ago. Wait a second, a decade ago? It's 2020. A decade ago would put it 2010. It said more than a decade ago, so let's go 2 years beyond that. Who was the president? 2008, 2009, 2010. That's right, in November, Barack Hussein Obama took over as president of the United States. This middle row, ladies and gentlemen, is the amount of fatalities that we had per year. In 2008, we had 155, and that was the last. Bush had the bulk of that. And then 2009, Obama comes around, 317 deaths. 2010, a decade from 220, 498 deaths. The next year, 415 deaths. And there were speculations back then about Russian involvement in putting hits on soldiers. And keep in mind, there was no coup d'etat. There was no brittle peace agreement that Obama made with the Afghans like Mr. Trump made with the Afghans. So that wasn't a concern. Why didn't Mr. Obama act on that? Was he an agent of Russia? Maybe his middle name is Medvedev and not Hussein. Do you think that any of these folks would be shooting videos like this when you have contradictory and shoddy information implicating Obama did, quote, nothing? Of course, it's not Obama's job to, quote, do something about intelligence. His job is to, when the intelligence community comes to him, his job is to poke holes in it and say, what about this, what about this, what about that? He's not supposed to just bow to the intelligence community and go with whatever they say. So here's the thing. We actually had a situation in which it was very believable that the Taliban would do such a thing in cahoots with Russia, because there was no peace agreement. And we can see the results that the highest death count per year happened during the Obama administration. Literally immediately. It went from 155 to 317. He basically doubled it immediately. And then he went from 317 to 498. But is Beau going to talk about that? Come on. Look, I don't blame Obama for not jumping on the Russians over that either, by the way. Because again, it's just speculative, it's shoddy, and there's nothing really to sink your teeth into in this regard. I think it would be silly to blame President Obama for that, just as I think it's silly to go after Mr. Trump. We continue.
The other argument that's coming out is that, well, we can't trust this. We can't trust this because it's coming from the intelligence community, and they're all liars. Sure, but we'll trust the Russian one. Look, I get it. The intelligence community does not have the best public track record. I understand that. And that's all fine and good. Have skepticism, have doubts. But please keep in mind, these reports didn't originate with the intelligence community. They originated with the troops on the ground. So when you say you don't trust this, that they're lying, what you're saying is that the SEALs and Delta that are over there are lying. You support the troops, but they're liars.
First, he says that the reports originated not from the CIA, but from DevGru and combat or Delta operators. This is what he said. Well, here's Time Magazine. CIA and Special Operations Command officers in Afghanistan. That's SOCOM. That's Special Operations Command. So he's got a point about Delta and DevGru. Concluded, watch this, based on information from human sources, that the Russians were, etc., etc., etc. So, again, Beau, you're wrong. The story did not originate with the CIA or DevGru or Delta operators. The story originated, as CNN reported a couple days ago, from captured militants who would have been interrogated by CIA and DevGru elements for sure, and criminals. Those are the sources. So DevGru and Delta and the CIA were just parroting what the sources said. But again, we're also told in the article that you didn't read and you didn't make reference to, that when they were collecting the intel, it had conflicting storylines. That's why it wasn't deemed credible. Beau? Now, here's the National Security Archive. Now, look, you probably have friends or probably have had a friend who's been in the CIA. But I almost guarantee you that you've never had a friend in the NSA. The entrance for the NSA is almost humanly impossible. The National Security Agency actually has an archive where they released documentations you don't even need to submit a FOIA for. It's very, very interesting stuff. Again, I do not believe that Mr. Fifth Column even knows about this this website. Here's the National Security Archive. This document is entitled PR Push for Iraq War Preceded Intelligence Findings. This is a white paper. In it, we read the following. The point of this white paper is to talk about how the agency, the CIA, could have made such a horrific blunder in regard to the war in Iraq. And they're making the case that it was due to manipulation. Now watch this. Not all manipulation was visible. Behind the scenes at the State Department, Undersecretary of State John R Bolton, this is the same Bolton that wrote that book, and it's the same Bolton that supposedly personally told Mr. Trump about what happened in 2019, same guy, also closely allied with the Office of the Vice President, pressured both the State Department and the CIA to fire individuals who refuse to clear text in his speeches, leveling the most extreme charges against other countries. Although Bolton's actions did not concern Iraq directly, they came to a high point during the summer of 2002, the exact moment when Iraq intelligence issues were on the front burner. Later on, he goes to say, analysts working on Iraq intelligence could not be blamed for concluding that their own careers might be in jeopardy if they supplied answers other than what the Bush administration wanted to hear. What that tells us, ladies and gentlemen, is that the CIA are not a group of androids who are just information processing machines. These are people that are regular people that have biases, that run into confirmation bias, that could be threatened just like anybody else, and are subject to the politicization of their art. Those are facts. This is the NSA. This is not even CNN, MSNBC. This is the NSA now. And who was at the center of that? The big homie John R Bolton, who has marshaled all of his powers and force against Mr. Trump. So you will miss me if you are trying to tell me, oh, Trump's just ignoring a bunch of really intelligent people who whatever. As if this apparatus cannot be manipulated. And if you think this is conspiracy stuff, if the NSA stuff is not enough for you, please watch the following. This is 2018, I believe. This is Mr. Chuck Schumer on the Red Bader-in-Chief Rachel Maddow episode. Here we go.
But he's taking these shots, this antagonism, this taunting to the intelligence community.
You take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you. So even for a practical, supposedly hard-nosed businessman, he's being really dumb to do this.
What do you think the intelligence community would do if they were motivated?
I don't know, but from what I am told, they are very upset with how he has treated them and talked about them.
A rare moment of honesty, basically said, you don't mess with the CIA, the intelligence community. You don't do that, because they'll get you. This is not conspiracy stuff. This is not, when these Trump people talk about the deep state, you would have to be a fool or blind or just completely uninformed to say, I get it. You support the truth, but they're liars. I don't believe that the troops are liars. I believe that those elements really do believe what they heard from those prisoners. Just like I said with you, Beau, there's some things that I think there's no other way to interpret it other than you're dishonest. And then there are, you're just ignorant. Just like me with certain things. So no, I don't have to disagree with that report that's full of contradictions and all the rest of it to agree with the Delta operators or DevGru operators. It's not either or. They could be misinformed. And by the way, I don't know if you know this or not, but it doesn't matter if you're in a tier 1 unit. You do not get access to everything that the CIA knows. You don't get access. I'll just say it that way. Those are facts. You don't get access to everything. So these guys are going with the information that they know. And I don't think they're liars. I just think that they're wrong. And I think if they were able to look at all of the intel, because another thing that Beau doesn't seem to realize is that the CIA on a multitude of occasions can say, we're taking over this particular person, go back in the field and go kill some more people. Unbelievable stuff. We continue.
The easiest thing to help put pressure on Russia to stop this would have been for President Trump to stop acting like he's their ambassador on the world stage, to stop advocating for them.
All right. Trump is functioning as the ambassador to the Russians on the world stage. I'm going to read something to you from a beautiful middle American by the name of Contrabel. He says, this is very important. I wish more people saw this video. I'm Russian myself, and it's sickening to see how eager people are to blame our government for something. With that said, the Russian government is not a present group of people by any stretch of the imagination. But it doesn't mean that you can just falsely accuse them of something and run with it. Some of these people, when you're putting this stuff out there, You're not even considering the human cost. I talked about this in the previous episode where Russian diplomats in the UK and the United States are getting death threats. And now here you have a regular Russian citizen. And he's hearing for the last 4 years that his country is this, his country is that, yada, 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 yada. And you are perpetuating that nonsense. Beau? Here's the Brookings Institute. It's brookings.edu. And this is talking about the U.S. administration actions on Russia. Now, what's very fascinating about this article is it's actually written by a Russian lady, and she's saying for all the talk about conciliatory terms with Russia, Trump has been a disaster for Russia. And then they go on to list by year all the positive actions Mr. Trump has taken in regard to Russia, because practically everything he does is good for Russia on the world stage. Let's see, September 30th, in response to 2018 election interference, 4 entities and 7 individuals, including Russian financier Yevgeny, were sanctioned over an attempt interference of 2018 midterm elections. September 26th, in response to sanctions evading scheme for Syria, the Treasury Department Office of Foreign Assets Control identified Moscow-based Maritime Assistance LLC as the head of a sanctions evasion scheme to deliver jet fuel to Syria. August 2nd, sanctions in response to Salisbury attacks. The sanctions fall under the Chemical and Biological Weapons Control and Warfare Elimination Act. The U.S. will oppose loans and assistance by international institutions and restrictions on the export on Department of Commerce controlled goods and technology. The Trump administration went so far after the Russians that they wouldn't even, they were going after international financial institutions who were helping them as well. This is Trump advocating and being a diplomat on the Russian stage. We continue. Sanctions. A Chechen group and 5 Russian individuals were sanctioned under the Magnitsky Act over allegations of human rights abuses, including extrajudicial killings and the torture of LGBT people. Did you know that? Show me the sanctions where Mr. Obama did anything to any Russian over the torture of LGBT people. December 21st, this is just 2018. Increasing security assistance to Ukraine's Navy. The U.S. Department of State announced it would provide an additional $10 million in foreign military financing to further build Ukraine's naval capabilities in response to Russian attacks. And it goes on and on and on. I'll put the link in the description. This woman goes after Trump and says, this dude is no friend of Russia. There's a lot of talk about how conciliatory he was going to be because he said that during the campaign, and he's been worse than Obama to Russians. Those are facts. But what does Beau say? In the last video, he says practically everything Trump does is beneficial to Russia. And here he is saying that Trump is a diplomat for Russia. That's a lie. It's untrue. That's not an opinion. That's a lie. We continue. You don't get to have opinions about facts. If I say Trump's hairdo is crazy, that's my opinion. If I say that Trump is wearing a toupee, that is a fact statement, and it is either true or false. I'll let you decide. We continue.
One thing that shouldn't have been done is to just leave them twisting in the wind. Leave them as live action target practice for the opposition. Because while the president is planning rallies and tweeting about his enemies in social media, there are bags being filled. And he doesn't. It's appalling. It's appalling.
Appalling indeed. I agree. What you just said is appalling. Because if I was a space alien unfamiliar with what's going on in this country, I would just assume that while Trump is tweeting, American bodies are dropping left and right. Well, look. Here's what we have. This is a website that is dedicated to chronicling the killings that the Taliban has engaged in. And they've got them for dates. June 19th through June 25th. In a statement Monday, the Afghan National Security Council called the past week the deadliest in 19 years of war in the country. 422 attacks were carried out by the Taliban during the week, killing 291 members of security forces and wounding 550 others. An additional 148 civilians were also killed in the violence. And you can just read and read and read and read and read all the coordinated attacks that the Taliban has been doing. You know what was missing in this line here? U.S. troops. U.S. troops are not being killed en masse. They're not swinging in the wind, and they're not walking targets for the Taliban. This tells me that the Taliban is still extremely active. They pulled off what? It says they were able to pull off 422 attacks in a week. These guys are still getting busy. But do you think it's a coincidence that no Americans are being killed? They told us. Mr. Mujahid on the last video told us. He said the Americans are safe. We have a deal with them. We're not going to compromise the deal. By the way, the deal also states that anybody who is recruiting the Taliban sees they have to stop recruiting to kill Americans. There's a whole bunch of stuff there. Now, what was interesting in this video, and I hope you go watch the whole thing from start to finish, I'll put the link in the description. What's really interesting about this video is he never mentions the ramifications of what would happen if Trump took this literally and seriously. All he talks about is Russia. And he even says, hey, this would justify military intervention for Russia. Doesn't mean you should do it, but it would certainly be justified. Well, Mr. Beau, I don't know if you understand this, but if Trump took that seriously, then he would have to take a military response to the Taliban, because that would mean they reneged on the deal. Beau? The Taliban is still out killing people in droves, but it is obvious that they are purposely avoiding Americans. That is a fact. Now, speaking of people swinging in the wind, speaking of people swimming all over, do you remember those 30 pine nut farmers that we droned earlier? Killed 30 of them in a single shot. Here's the intercept. More than 70 children killed in just 10 airstrikes in Afghanistan, report finds. So in one day, we killed more Afghan civilians than the entirety of the year of 2020 so far. Because we've got, I believe, 24 deaths, rest in peace, of servicemen so far in the entire year of 2020. And this was given to us as early as 2019, we were told. And those are the numbers. We've seen the numbers when the Taliban is attacking U.S. troops. We already saw that during Mr. Obama's administration. We're talking about hundreds of people dying a year. Do you not realize that those 39 pine nut farmers, one day we did the entire year? I don't know if Beau or anybody else has been seeing the ramifications of a drone strike or any sort of strike where you have parents collecting the legs and arms and the broken up jaws of their children, or a wife digging through this jangled mess of blood and bone to find an engagement ring. I don't know if you've ever seen something like that, but I would rather us be out of Afghanistan, and I would rather my leader choose paths that are going to bring us farther away from war and closer to home and not closer to war. And all these people who are crying, oh, Trump did nothing, yada, yada, yada. None of these people are addressing what that would do to the peace that we have, the brittle peace that we have, as I've been saying, with the Taliban. So no, our U.S. troops are not roving target practice for the enemy. That is ridiculous. I'm going to close with this. The CIA has not confirmed its conclusion about the alleged Russian program publicly. Then he goes off and says a whole bunch of hooey. But they haven't even confirmed this, even in the CIA. And then later, Pentagon spokesman Jonathan Hoffman also said that the Department of Defense, which includes the NSA, has, quote, no corroborating evidence to validate the reports, but that it continues to validate intelligence that Russian GRU operatives were engaged in malign activity against the United States coalition forces in Afghanistan, end quote. What do we have? We have a single report that is full of contradictions and inconsistencies, according to the Democrat, and is not credible. He calls its credibility in question. We have the CIA saying we haven't confirmed our conclusion, and you have the Pentagon saying there is no corroborating evidence to validate these reports. But our president is supposed to continue to marginalize Russia more than he already does. And he is also supposed to put the peace of the Afghan people and them being able to work in their pine nut farms and not have their heads separated from their bodies and not have U.S. troops once again engaging in bloody combat every single day with the Taliban. All of that is on the line for this type of intelligence reporting. And here's Beau, oh, this is terrible, this is sickening, it's appalling. What's appalling to me is that you are using the argument from emotion of U.S. soldiers getting body bagged all over the place by the Taliban to make your political point to go after somebody you don't like politically. I don't like Mr. Trump. I don't like him. I don't. I've shot multiple videos, and I think that his acolytes refuse to hold him accountable. I was on a live stream yesterday, and I said that as much. But Beau, we cannot encourage further action in Afghanistan on shoddy reporting from an agency that obviously is angry at Mr. Trump and obviously has demonstrated already that they have no problem lying and manipulating people in order to accomplish their own ends, particularly war. And I'm glad that we've got a president that stands up to this quote intelligence community and prioritizes the lives and health of American soldiers. I don't believe he cares much about the Afghans, but he did promise to get us out of the forever wars. And he's doing that. And I'm happy. And I bless God that he's the one on this particular situation, because we know what Hillary would have done. She was war hawking from the stage. Hillary was the one that was one of the architects of the Arab Spring, and she completely destabilized that region and helped to rise ISIS. We know what she would have done. The president did the right thing here. Beau, thank you so much for referring us to the article. If you are a Beau fan, I don't know what to tell you. I'll put all the links in the description. The CIA, the WhiteHouse.gov, everything. You can see it for yourself. We have got to report accurately. We have got to take responsibility for what we're doing in front of these cameras that is contributing to the toxic domestic environment we're in and the toxic global environment that we're in. Largely because of American imperialism, war, and bloodlust. Unbelievable stuff. Love your neighbor. Take care of each other. Middle America, we are the media. Till next time, guys.